Several years after the Trojan War, Odysseus, king of Ithaca, is lost at sea.
Penelope, his queen, is stalling her suitors by weaving a rug in honor of her husband who is assumed dead.
The suitors lust for power and wealth. They hold feasts every night at Odysseus' house.
His son Telemachus is visited by the goddess Athena, Odysseus' benefactor. Athena assumes the form of Odysseus' friend and talks to the boy. I'll make you a prophecy, one the immortal gods have planted in my mind. It will come true, I think, though I'm hardly a seer or know the flights of birds. He won't be gone long from the native land he loves, not even if iron shackles bind your father down. He's plotting a way to journey home at last. He's never at a loss. But come please, tell me about yourself now, point by point. You're truly Odysseus' son. You sprung up so. Uncanny resemblance. The head and the fine eyes. I see him now. How often we used to meet in the old days before he embarked for Troy, where other Argive captains, all the best men, sailed in the long, curved ships. From then to this very day, I've not set eyes on Odysseus or he on me. The goddess Athena comes to Telemachus, Odysseus' son in disguise, and with these words sets a spark to his tindery heart. Telemachus was all the makings of a noble hero: intelligence, wit, prudence, courage, and the family good looks, finds his house beset by a pack of shameless vultures. His father Odysseus has been missing and is presumed dead. His mother Penelope has many suitors, each of whom fosters hopes of taking over Odysseus' kingdom of Ithaca through marriage with his widow. Penelope, however, is holding out, knowing full well that the marriage would deprive Telemachus of his inheritance and ruin him. Meanwhile, as his father delays, the vulture suitors consume their way through Telemachus' wealth, and he watches helplessly as his fortune passes through their throats, as if through the throat of an hourglass. Like all the rest of us, his true enemy is of course time. The necrophagous beasts are merely a byproduct. As he matures, he comes to understand that his family possesses a finite supply of cattle, drink, and fine goods, and that when those supplies finally run out, he'll be next on the menu. Sigmund Freud first posited the controversial idea of castration anxiety to refer to a boy's developing fear of being castrated after observing the female genitalia, and concluding that is what's happened. Additionally, infant girls become aware of their lack of more perceptible reproductive organs, apparently associated with a greater degree of power and influence, which their male counterparts enjoy, and so experience themselves as already castrated. The physical member, however, is not the symbolic phallus, that is, the fountainhead, no pun intended, of the said power and influence, but rather, relatively speaking, a microscopic proxy for it. As a matter of fact, according to French psychoanalyst Lacan, another contentious figure, we are all of us in a constant state of lack, male or female, tall or short, sturdy or fragile, of noble or low birth, filthy rich or penniless. Nobody can measure up to the grandeur of the universal phallus. Gohar Homayounpour, Iranian psychoanalyst and author of Doing Psychoanalysis in Tehran, describes submitting to one's castration as, quote, the essence of what moves the individual from neurotic misery to common unhappiness. The former involves unconscious conflict and anxiety, while the latter is the result of reconciling oneself to the reality that desire will always be in excess of what we currently have. According to her, it is only when we set aside childish rebellion in the face of things we have no power over that we can pursue our more primary desires. Homayounpour analyzes three characters, Tomasz, Teresa, and Sabina, from the novel The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera, another beloved book of mine. She evaluates these characters in terms of the degree to which they have accepted their castration. Teresa has submitted herself fully. Sabina, on the other hand, is the eternal rebel, stubbornly refusing to do so, and Tomasz ranks somewhere in between. As much as I love Dr. Homayounpour's discourse, as she herself would probably put it was her book that gave me the nudge I needed to pick up the Odyssey after all. There's no way I can bring myself to agree with this claim. For starters, Teresa is frankly the most neurotic of the bunch. Seriously, she decides to go back to Soviet-occupied Czechoslovakia, straight into the belly of the beast, after having already deserted the country, on sheer impulse. I don't see how anyone can argue that poor, for the most part docile Tomasz is any more neurotic, but that's beside the point. I don't think it can be debated that we humans are acutely aware of our powerlessness, more so now than ever. Centuries ago, we considered our Earth to be the center of the universe and us its keepers, and we oriented ourselves in relation to an omniscient, celestial being, would provide us with an illusion of safety promised by knowledge, who Lacan would call a subject supposed to know. But I find it extremely hard to believe that the daily encounter with death and suffering in those times could have been anything but sobering. If you've listened to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, you should have a good sense of the insanity of ancient times. I mean, talk about hustling. Perhaps this is the logic behind modern people's lack of religiosity. Thanks to science and the relative safety of our times, at least in some places, people have more faith in their own abilities to ensure survival to old age. Therefore, the masses are in less need of figurative opium. Or maybe they just take the real thing now. So perhaps we are too aware of our mortality and smallness. And it could be our foolish striving in spite of that awareness. Our refusal to submit, the childish refusal to go gently into that good night, that has saved the species from extinction. The desire to keep playing a rigged game is the product of evolution. Our neuroticism is a feature, not a bug. Why else do we idolize rebels like Tommy Shelby in constant denial of his obvious limitations? What reason have we to love the scared little hobbit challenging the Dark Lord? And what's so nourishing for us in Odysseus' 10-year struggle with the sea god? That the story of Odysseus, the translation of the title The Odyssey, has become essentially synonymous with life's trials and tribulations. We're all familiar with the story at least to some extent. Paris, Trojan prince who is a guest at Menelaus, king of Sparta's house, betrays Menelaus' trust by seducing Helen, his wife, and taking her with him to Troy. Agamemnon, Menelaus' brother, calls on the forces of Greece to lay siege to Troy as punishment for insulting the hospitality of the Greeks. However, the Greeks find themselves unable to breach the citadel of Troy, which is famed as impenetrable, and so the siege continues on for years. Finally, Ithacan ruler Odysseus, favorite of Athena, the goddess of wisdom, comes up with a plan to circumvent their difficulty. The Greeks would build a great wooden horse and leave it outside the hall walls of Troy, while they sail to a nearby island, pretending to have abandoned the war. They leave behind Sinon, who would be taken captive by the Trojans. Sinon convinces his captors that the horse is an offering to Athena. Despite warning voices, the Trojans eventually decide to take the horse into their city, not knowing that hidden inside are a select group of Greek soldiers. At night, the soldiers creep out of the horse and open the gates of Troy to the Greek army, who sack the city and burn it to the ground. After the sacking of Troy, the Ithacans, believing that their trials are now over, set off on their journey home, drunk on victory and their ship loaded with loot. They thirst for still more. They attack the first settlement on their way. But Odysseus' ship veers off course, and he finds himself in the land of the lotus eaters. The lotus fruit brings forgetfulness. Those who ate from it, quote, lost all desire to send a message back, much less return. Their only wish to linger there, grazing on lotus, all memory of the journey home dissolved forever. Odysseus drags 3 of his men who have fallen under the spell back to their ship and ties them to the rowing benches, urging the rest of the crew to sail away lest all of them would forget their journey home. Their next stop is the island of the Cyclops. The Cyclops are a breed of giant men, with only one eye on their foreheads, vicious and hostile to visitors, great in might but lacking in brains, and favored by the gods. The island they inhabit is blessed with rich soil for growing things and green pastures for livestock. Odysseus, who is curious by nature, decides to visit the Cyclops and learn about their behavior. Thinking that they could overwhelm the Cyclops with numbers in case anything goes wrong, he takes his 12 best fighting men and magical potent wine with him. The Cyclops, however, soon proves to be a brutal monster and powerful and terrible beyond their expectations. It devours 2 of Odysseus' men on the spot and imprisons the rest for future meals. The lotus fruit and the Cyclops are symbolic of 2 of the most potent human challenges. The former represents the human tendency to complacency, as does the latter the brute force of nature and the injustice of a world that rewards cruelty and barbarism and punishes virtue. Stunned by the crushing strength of the Cyclops, Odysseus watches as his men are devoured one after another. Finally, he gets his wits about him and finds a way to escape and board their ship with 6 of his remaining men and the Cyclops' sheep herd. But now his pride is wounded, and he is filled with rage. Odysseus, the cleverest and the most virtuous of mortals, was bested by a cave troll. Still within throwing distance of the brutal monster, he proceeds to hurl taunts at it, crying out, "So, Cyclops! No weak coward it was whose crew you bent to devour in your vaulted cave! You with your brute force? Your filthy crimes came down on your own head, you shameless cannibal, daring to eat your guests in your own house? So Zeus and the other gods have paid you back. The monster reciprocates the insults by flinging an enormous rock at the ship, nearly upending it. Alarmed by this display of madness, the crew plead with Odysseus to stop his taunts. But Odysseus pays them no heed, crying again, Cyclops, if any man on the face of the earth should ask you who blinded you, shamed you so, say Odysseus, raider of cities. He gouged out your eye, Laertes' son who makes his home in Ithaca. Thus, having learned Odysseus' name, the Cyclops beseeches the sea god Poseidon to impede his journey home, bellowing,
Hear me, Poseidon, god of the sea, blue mane who rocks the earth. If I really am your son, grant that Odysseus never reaches home, or if he's fated to see his people once again in his own native country. Let him come home late and a broken man, all shipmates lost, alone in a stranger's ship, and let him find a world of pain at home.
Odysseus is faced with a castration dilemma at several turns on his journey, and each time he chooses rebellion over submission. From a purely consequentialist perspective, the results are at best varied. Would it have served him better had he not left Ithaca for the prospect of fame and loot? Or had he abandoned all hope of returning home and stayed in the country of the Lotus Eaters in blissful ignorance? Would that? Would he have got home safe had he not taunted the Cyclops? As a species, we are fascinated with David versus Goliath stories. It is everywhere. In our sports, in our fiction, even in our art. The small figure raising his puny weapon against the monster of chaos is an all too familiar image. Modern entertainment often gets this wrong. No, the hero doesn't vanquish the monster only on account of his virtue. He also gets incredibly lucky. We know this deep down, that despite our best efforts, sometimes the odds are overwhelmingly stacked against us. A best bet is all we have. There's a Persian saying that goes, "Azoye dor hami arusiye," or the older version, "Marge ba anbuh jasht ast." But no matter which variation, it could roughly be translated to, a funeral might as well be a wedding, so long as everybody else is there too. When things seem dire, we're given two choices, either to cower and yield, or to ride into our doom heads held high. If you have to do it alone, it is more tragic. But in times of real darkness, when the shadow looms over all, the choice is obvious. Heed the rallying cry of Theoden the king and his heir Eomer. Strike wherever the enemy gathers. Other plans we cannot make, for we know not yet how things stand upon the field. Forth now, and fear no darkness. Arise, arise, riders of Theoden. Fell deeds awake, fire and slaughter. Spear shall be shaken, shield be splintered. A sword day, a red day, ere the sun rises. Ride to ruin and the world's ending.